We are starting. Okay, so thank you very much and welcome everybody. And today's class presentation is from a Rav Yosef Greenwald. Okay, he's the one who compiled all of the sources that I'm going to be sharing with you. So the question is, secondhand smoke, what are my rights? Okay? Now, before we come to secondhand smoke, right, let's deal with the topic of smoking in the first place, right? Smoking cigarettes at this point where marijuana has become legalized in our great state, right? So we can extend the conversation to different types of legalized smoking. So smoking is a very interesting example that we see that halacha has evolved over the course of time, right? Don't worry, I'm not going rogue here in our Orthodox synagogue, right? It has evolved not because the halacha has evolved, but because our understanding, our medical view, and our understanding of the effects of smoking and the consequences and the dangers of smoking, that has evolved over time, right? When it first came out, I remember listening, I forgot where it was, but on YouTube, I forgot where commercials in the 1940s of doctors, right, recommending smoking as being great for digestion and other thoughts, right? And certain cigarettes were promoted as the cigarettes that most doctors choose to smoke.
Camel?
Yeah. I don't know which one it was, right? Now the medical community has really come to a very clear conclusion that smoking is dangerous in the long term and in the short term, and therefore poskim have adopted more restrictive positions about the halachic permissibility of smoking at all. Right? We are commanded to take care of ourselves. The Rambam, which is the first source that we have, here he's talking about the Torah obligation of a ma'akeh, mem ayin kuf hey, which is a protective guardrail, fence, that one must put onto their roofs there. We're talking about flat roofs that people can go onto these roofs, or balconies, porches, where there's a Torah obligation to have a ma'akeh. And the Rambam, we have it both in Hebrew and English, so follow as you feel most comfortable. Echad agag, the same thing applies whether we're discussing the Torah's example of a roof, the echad kol davar sheish bo sakana, or any matter which has danger. V'ra'ui shichashel ba'adam v'yamut, and it's possible that a person might stumble and die. Could go, for example, shaytelo be'er, o bor. The person had a well or a pit, b'chatzeiro, in his courtyard. Bein sheyesh b'mayim, bein she'ein b'mayim, whether it is a well filled with water, whether it is an empty pit. Chayev la'asot chulya gavoa asar tfachim. A person must make a chulya, a wall around it, a sand wall around it, that is 10 tfachim high. Okay? A tefach is in between 3 and 4 inches. So you'd have to have a 40-inch high wall around it. O la'asot la kisui, or to have it properly covered. Kedei shelo yipol ba'adam v'yamut, so no one should fall there and die. V'chein kol michshol, so too any sort of obstacle, sheyesh bo sakanat nefashot, which can cause death. Mitzvah tasei lahasiro, there is a positive Torah command to remove that. Uli shamer mimenu, to guard from it. Uli zaher v'davar yafeh yafeh, to be very careful with the matter. And today's Lunch and Learn is sponsored by Robert in memory of
My father,
the name again, and I sent it in the email.
Yaakov David ben Yosef.
Yaakov David ben Yosef. So today's learning is L'iloi Nishmato, is in his merit to elevate his soul. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Hishamer l'cha ushmor nafshecha. Right, guard yourself, guard your soul, guard your life. V'im lo heisir, and if a person does not remove it, v'hiniach hamichshalot, and he allows these obstacles to remain, hamevian lidei sakana, which could come to a danger. Bitel mitzvot aseh, he has not fulfilled the positive command, va'avar, and he has transgressed the prohibition of lo tasim damim. Do not put blood, literally, do not cause blood to be spilled. So we have to take care of ourselves. So once it's become very clear that smoking is deadly, it is something that can and will kill, so then clearly a person must be careful. Now, many poskim initially permitted smoking when it was not yet viewed as being so harmful. As I said before, originally it was viewed as being beneficial. Okay, even in the 1960s, it was not yet proven that smoking was definitely dangerous. I know in the house that I grew up in, my father, alav hashalom, was ahead of his time, and it was a house which did not have ashtrays. Right? Commonly, every house had ashtrays, and people would come and they'd light their cigarettes and smoke away. My father, alav hashalom, was an avid anti-smoker, and there were no ashtrays, and people were told not to smoke in the house.
He was way ahead of his time because most of the Yeshiva Bachers I knew smoked like chimneys.
Yeah. My father he wasn't a yeshiva bacher,
Yeah.
but he was certainly ahead of his time. Right? Now, Rav Moshe Feinstein Zatzal, he addressed smoking during that time period, and he said although a certain amount of danger was present, and it was proper to refrain from smoking, it was not forbidden for someone who already had started and had difficulty stopping. He applied a halachic notion based on the pasuk v'shomer pitayim Hashem. God protects the innocent or the foolish, and that is, if it's something that people commonly do, it's considered normal. Even if there is a certain amount of danger, a person can partake. It's not forbidden because the danger does not happen to every person in every single case, right? And he gives another example is a non-healthy diet, right? It's certainly not the best thing for one's body, but we wouldn't say that one is going against these Torah directives, since that's how people eat. Right? Now, obviously, if a person has a medical condition which requires certain restrictions, and the person decides not to follow those restrictions, that would be transgressing this obligation of guarding ourselves. Okay? Now, that was about 50 years ago. Right? At this point, right, it's hard to say that smoking is normative behavior, right? Now, right, and so it's not so clear that would still apply. More contemporary poskim have publicized that it is forbidden to smoke. It's clearly dangerous. It's both long-term and short-term, deadly. Now, another aspect of smoking that is a very interesting application that has evolved over time is when it comes to Yom Tov. Okay? On Yom Tov, we can't light fires
Right.
but we can transfer flames, okay? And again, I remember growing up that on Yom Tov they had a yahrzeit candle going outside the shul in the back there, and the smokers, they wouldn't light up, they wouldn't take out their lighter or a match, but they would go to the existing flame and they would light up their cigarettes and they would puff away on their cigarettes. Now, when it comes to fire, the Torah allows that for cooking usage. The Gemara extends that to other fire usage that is shaveh l'kol nefesh. That is something that is eating like, in that it's something that everyone does. The Gemara doesn't allow it for burning incense to put a fragrance onto one's garments, because that's not something that that everyone does. That's for the fine schmeckers, those very people who are, oh, I've got to have this perfect incense on my, right? But that's not for the Hamon Am. That's not something that applies to the general populace. Therefore, it's not considered eating like. It's not general populace applicable like eating. And therefore the Gemara said that would not be allowed. So it's fascinating to see once again how this has evolved over time. That initially smoking was so commonplace and so accepted, it was considered to be like ochel nefesh, like eating. And therefore it was allowed on Yom Tov. Nowadays, right, it'd be a very difficult argument to make, to say that, oh, everyone smokes. Smoking is like eating. That's something that majority of the people do, right? Certainly not in the United States, certainly not in California, certainly not in our beloved city of Irvine, right? Now, it's interesting. In Israel, right, the sensitivity and the awareness of smoking, I would say, I lived in Israel for many years, was running about 5 to 7 years behind here in the States. When I was a student in Israel, this is 1979, 1980, 1981. I remember vividly being on a bus in the winter, so all the windows were closed, and people were taking out their cigarettes and puffing away. And if you asked them to please not smoke, they viewed it as if a person is on a bus, and I take out a book, and I'm reading my book, and someone saying to me, please don't read. Right? I say, why is it bothering you? That's how it was viewed then, if you were to be asked to please not smoke. Now already in Israel, they don't allow smoking in public areas, right? But that's, when it comes to smoking on Yom Tov, it's we've seen that halacha evolve also. And now for someone to say that, yes, you're allowed to smoke on Yom Tov because it's ochel nefesh like, it's food consumption like, that it's shaveh l'kol nefesh, something that everyone does, like I said, is a very, very, very difficult, I'd even call it a desperate argument to make. Yes, Ian?
I remember people smoking on Pesach.
Yeah, on Yom Tovim, that was considered to be acceptable, and that when smoking was viewed, when smoking was prevalent, right?
I do find cigarette butts around my house, but I think it's people who are gardeners who come from another country. Gardeners.
I mean, there are Americans
Not my
that smoke,
Yeah, oh, definitely. I find cigarette
even
butts
in California,
my
even in Irvine.
Yeah,
Right,
of course.
but it's gotten to the point now that if I'm walking home on a Shabbos or something, and I stop by Culver and there's someone smoking, because I haven't been around smoke for so long, I am so sensitized to it
Yeah.
that it's almost shocking. It's like a shock to the system to breathe in their smoke?
Smoking on Shabbos, obviously not permitted, but I used to know people who were kind of heavy smokers who somehow managed for 25 hours
Yeah.
or so
The Shabbos, they could
Yeah.
manage not
not
to
to
smoke.
pick up a cigarette.
Can I join?
Please.
But right after Havdalah.
Oh, sure, it's good to
But
see
right
you.
after Havdalah, poof.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
father was a chain smoker.
Can I say?
That came to Shabbos, did not smoke, and the minute Shabbos was out, started to smoke. And the doctor used to say to him, if you can stop
For a day.
for that time, why can't you stop?
Yeah.
And we all used to say to him, but he couldn't.
My grandfather, Lava Shalom, lived to 95, and he used to puff away on his cigars,
Oh, yeah.
and was a bit overweight, nowhere near obese, but a bit overweight. And my father, Lava Shalom, again was an avid anti-smoker, so he used to always say to my grandfather, "Pop, it's not good for you." My grandfather would say, "When you reach my age, you'll tell me about it." Yeah, and he lived to 95 with his cigars. At the same time, so again, smoking clearly has been very, very clearly identified as being something that is very dangerous to our health, and we've seen, again, the halacha hasn't evolved. The halacha is always the same. Our understanding of smoking has evolved, and that has had its effects on the halacha, whereas originally poskim would allow smoking, now it's hard to find poskim that allow smoking, whereas smoking on on Yom Tov was considered eating like fire activity and was permitted, now it is no longer considered to be like that. However, the question that comes up more often is this secondhand smoke, right? Can I ask someone or demand someone who is smoking to please refrain from doing so, right? Now, again, nowadays it's less of an issue because public areas are predominantly prohibited from smoking, right? However, there are certain areas that are designated smoking areas, right? So if you don't like it, don't go into their designated smoking area and ask them not to smoke. However, right, something that does happen very, very often is that people will go outside of their houses to have a smoke, and that smoke ends up wafting into the homes of other neighbors around, So his wife kicks him out to the backyard because she doesn't want it in her house, and therefore now it's wafting into my house. So a question that was posed to Rav Moshe, this was posed in 1981, and this was a very, very common thing, that it was a kollel. Now, right, for those who smoke, I never got into smoking, thankfully, but it's supposed to be very soothing and relaxing, and so a person, lots of guys when they're learning, they love to be smoking on a cigarette as they're learning. So the question came up in a kollel, that some of the guys wanted to smoke and other guys definitely did not want them to smoke, and what would be, right? Could they demand that they not do so? And the way Rav Moshe analyzed it actually is very, very fascinating. And that's a couple of Gemaras, Mishnayot, that we will learn through together. There's something called nezikin. Nezikin is damages. Classic damage is that I move into your space and I cause damage. I break your window. My animal goes into your field, your garden, and it chomps on your prize tomatoes. Right? That is classic nezek, is damage, is I move into your space and I cause harm. There's another aspect called niskei shchenim. which is the laws of neighborly relations and damage caused by neighbors, but not that my neighbor came into my house with a baseball bat and broke a window, but it's, so to speak, damage that comes to me through these non-regular damage cases. For example, let's look at the Mishnah, Baba Batra 17a, and English, it's the first English. Lo yachbor adam bor, samuch leboro shel chaveiro. I'm in my field. My neighbor has his field. He has a pit dug in his field. I should not dig a pit in my field, close to his pit. Velo siach, velo ma'ara, right? Nor a siach is a different type. In the English says here a ditch or a cave. Velo amat hamayim. Amat hamayim is an irrigational ditch. I should not do that close to his. Velo nivrechet kovsim, or a pool where I'm for laundering. I should not dig this in my property, close to his property. Ela im kain hirchik mikotu chaveiro shlosha tvachim, unless he keeps at least a distance of 3 tvachim, 3 handbreadths from his kotel, from the wall of his property. V'sad besid, and that wall must be plastered. Umarchikim et hagefet, ve'et hazevel, ve'et hamelech, ve'et hasid, ve'et haslaim. I've got to distance my gefet, which is the seeds, pits from olives, zevel, fertilizer, melach, salt, seed, lime, slaim, certain types of stones. I've got to keep that again. Mikotelo shel chavero, from my neighbor's wall, a distance of 3 tvachim. Sad besid, right, from the wall, right? Or, it says here, and plastered it over. Marchikim et hazraim, vet hamacharisha. I've got to distance. Vet mei raglayim, if I've got things, planting, seeds. Macharisha, a plowing area. Mei raglayim, a urinal area. I've got to distance that. It's on my property. Min hakotel shlosha tvachim, 3 tvachim from the wall. Umarchikim et ha'arechayim, shlosha min hashachav, shehein arba'a min harechev. And we're talking about millstones over here, so you have to distance it 3 from the upper part, which is 4 from the lower stone. Et a tanur, if I'm setting up an oven. Ovens were set up outside a property. That's got to be 3 distance. Min ha'kalya, from the base, which is arba min hasafa, right, which is 4 from another part of the oven. So what do we see, this concept here? We see that, right, the nivrechet kovsin, the launderer's pool, it has acidic levels there, which can seep through the ground and cause damage to the foundation of buildings or pits that he has dug for his water supply. Therefore, I've got to move back on my property. I'm on my property doing what I need on my property. But if that might cause damage elsewhere, right, then he's got to move back. Now the Gemara discusses, let's say, who came first, right? If I was there first, can I maintain that? And in certain situations, even if it comes afterwards, I've got to distance myself. Now, yes?
What just came to mind, like the same business, have 2 people who have the same business, are not allowed to set up their shops right next to each
Okay.
other because
Okay, there's also that idea of masi gvul. Yeah. Okay?
But this,
Now,
this may not be related, but it's a message as well when you plant a tree or build a pit or a fireplace, whatever, against your own house, you should be 3 tfachim away because it may damage your own wall.
uh-huh.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
a lesson we can learn
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah, yeah,
Especially a tree
yeah.
can
Now,
damage the roof. And the
yeah,
wall.
that's true, Ian. That is correct. Now, we even have the concept, I didn't copy this Mishnah, we have the concept of Hezek Re'iyah. Hezek Re'iyah means the damage that you can see into my yard, right? So I've lost my privacy, right? And therefore, at times, I can force my neighbor to chip in with me to build a wall in order to separate. That's another aspect of nizkei shechenim, of damage performed by neighbors, right? Even though you're not coming into my area, okay? But right, so I'm not actually invading someone else's space, but I am causing them potential harm. Now, what's fascinating is when it comes to actual damage, when is it a problem? Once the damage has been done, now you must compensate. Whereas over here, the issue is even before that, right? If you're using your property in a way that's going to prevent me from normal usage of my property, then you must distance yourself, even if no damage has yet come to me. Nevertheless, we must prevent that from coming about.
But by extension, that would also apply to very, very loud noise that prevents you from enjoying the neighbor,
Yeah.
from the neighbor.
Yeah, I haven't heard the past few weeks, Basil. Have they stopped practicing their garage band Saturday afternoon?
Not quite. Oh, yes, they have.
Have they stopped?
They have.
Yeah.
Yeah. They
When I walked by 2 weeks ago, I didn't hear them. I thought, oh, Basil must be enjoying his
I
nap.
think they tented the house. So I've got a feeling that they may be moving.
Oh, okay.
So hopefully they're gone. Yeah.
As long as they take their instruments with
I have a
them.
neighbour that has every Saturday afternoon
A garage band going.
in his garage.
Yeah.
And it's a bit
I mean, I enjoy it as I'm walking past, but I wouldn't enjoy it if I was living across from there.
No. It's, actually, if we sit outside and listen, sometimes it's not bad, but
And
don't
you think
need
of those
to
boom
But
box.
you rather have the ability to
turn it off.
adjust the volume or just turn it off.
Well, in Israel recently,
The minuets.
Muslim call to prayer,
Yeah.
they do it over loudspeakers, and
Yeah.
so it disturbs all the people in the neighborhood.
Yeah. There's new legislation about that, and such legislation does exist in many Arab countries. It's interesting to note that at certain times it's got to be done at a certain,
Decibel level.
yes, beneath a certain decibel level.
So you see, Rabbi, in those circumstances we can listen to music on Saturday afternoon.
I'm sorry.
I can listen to music on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. As long as you're not involved in that, that's correct. Now, the Gemara has another Mishnah and then the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Very interesting. That's Baba Batra 22b, right on the right hand side in Hebrew, and it's the second English paragraph underneath it. Marchikin et hasulam min hashovach arba amot. Let's say my neighbor has these different nests where he produces whatever, raises birds in these nests. I cannot leave a ladder leaning against my wall in my area, in my yard. I must distance a ladder that I have from that shovach, from his nests, arba amot, 4 cubits, about between 6 and 8 feet. Why? Kedei shelo tikpotz hanimaya. Otherwise, there's a certain animal, a weasel, a rat, whatever it might be, an animal which would utilize my ladder to get into those nests and create some carnage over there. That hakotel min ha-mazchila. Now let's say this person has a roof gutter. Okay? He needs to be able to access that roof gutter. So therefore, if I'm going to put a wall there, I've got to distance that wall from the gutter, dalit amot, kedei she'eh zokef et hasulam, in order that he'll be able to have ladder access in order to get up on to access those gutters and clean them out when necessary. So once again, in my property, I've got to assure that there is no harm that is coming to someone else through me. The Gemara says, "Lema matnisim delok Rabbi Yossi." It would seem our Mishnah is not a universal opinion. Our Mishnah is not according to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Di Rabbi Yossi, ha'amar zeh chover b'tok shelo v'zeh noteah b'tok shelo. Rabbi Yossi says that this one digs in his property and this one plants in his property. Meaning Rabbi Yossi is of the opinion that a person can be osek b'toch shelo. A person can be dealing with his own property and not have to worry about the other ones. So the Gemara says no. Afilu teim Rabbi Yossi. Even Rabbi Yossi, who says that, would agree in these cases. Rav Ashi, didn't Rav Ashi qualify Rav Yosef's allowance? Ki avinam bey, when he was in the yeshiva of Rav Kahana. Havi Omer, he would say, Modu Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi himself agrees, begirei d-day. Literally, when it is his arrows. When it is more of a direct cause. Hachanami, so that he is zin in the bahade the manachle yatva bechor. As I'm putting that ladder, right then that weasel, the animal, whatever it is in its den, the kafza. And as I'm putting the ladder, he's going to jump onto the ladder and jump up to the nests. Right? Vaha gramahu. The Gemara asks, very good. But I'm not damaging. At best, it's grama. I am cause. I'm an indirect cause of the damage. The Gemara says, "Am Rav Yosef." I'm sorry, I'm Rav Yosef. Zot omer grama benezikin aser. Even if I will not be monetarily liable for the damage, it might still be a Torah prohibition. It's not that if I'm not financially liable, then it's allowed. There are certain things that I'm not allowed to do. I might not be financially liable. I might be financially liable. But the lack of liability does not mean that it is permitted. So we see over here that when it is gira d-day, when it is his arrows, then it is prohibited. So now we see our sages are teaching us this idea that he never left his own property. But if I damage, what I'm doing is that you cannot utilize your space, so then it's considered as if I've damaged your yard, I've damaged your space, or I've thrown you out of your yard. Okay? Because I am not allowing you to utilize space that is meant for you to be, for you to utilize it. I'm not allowing you to live normally on your side. I've got to distance myself even if no damage has occurred. Right? There's another case in Bava Batra that I didn't quote, which was involving Rav Yosef, that in the a common medical practice was bloodletting. Okay, this was right. Even nowadays, we still say that it's healthy to give blood and let the body work and reproduce and produce more blood. but they used to use, they did that as a very common way of maintaining health or trying to get better. So one of the neighbors was bloodletting on one side of the house, right, on one side of the fence, under his trees, okay, and birds came and consumed the blood, and then flew up onto the tree above there, and got blood onto the dates that were onto that tree. Rav Yosef insisted that the bloodletters had to move, even though they were doing all of this on their own property, right? Because he was he cannot deal with these blood-stained dates, even though it could have just been washed off. Halachically, you wash it off and it's permitted, but he was a little too queasy for that, and they had to move. Okay? And again, this idea is that I am like stealing to a degree your property if I'm not enabling you to utilize your property through that which I am doing. So if Moshe, based on all of these Gemaras, concluded that smokers cannot say, I'm osek bitoch shali, I'm doing, I'm sitting over here on my table, so you're over there, why is it bothering you? I remember back in the days when there used to be smoking allowed on airplanes, right? In the back of the plane, right? And the worst thing was if you got the last row of non-smoking, like a lot of good that does. I used to sit there and take the air vents and just send them back to try to just keep it back there with them, right? So a person can certainly not say, I'm being osek b'toch shali, right? If the person is smoking in a public area, right? Now, or even smoking in a place, right? Or this kollel, which was not a public area, but it was a place for everyone to be. And if their smoking is going to cause discomfort and actually harm to others there, right, then certainly they have grounds to demand that they not smoke. Okay? And, right, so the smoker has a right to be there as much as the non-smoker, but he does not have the ability to take away the non-smoker's right to be in a non-smoke, his want to be in a smoke-free environment. And this Nizkei Shchenim, right, comes up fairly often, right? It's not uncommon in a shul or something that someone walks in and they're hot, so they want to crank up the AC, right? Or they're cold, so they want to turn off the AC, right? Because they're sweating or they're freezing. And once again, right, we're talking about in a public area, the laws of Nizkei Shchenim, right, is that it must be set in a way that is acceptable for the general populace there. And for anyone to decide that they are the ones who are going to determine this based on how hot or how cold they are, right, besides it being somewhat inconsiderate, it is a halachic breach of Nizkei Shchenim. That when you are in a public or somewhat public area, an area that's not just yours, and you see, even if it does belong to you, if it's going to affect others, certainly when we are in the public sphere, so then one has to be careful not to violate the property rules of a jointly owned or jointly accessed area. Right? Another example that he gives is parking, right? Parking in a way that inconveniences pedestrians, right? Taking up extra spots, right? All of this is affecting the smooth, expected utilization of public or quasi-public area, right? That a person can say, well, I'm doing, I got here first, right? A person needs to be aware of the others.
So what is the punishment? Is it a heavenly punishment? What is the...
Okay, so
When you be selfish week after week, and what happens in the end if you don't stop doing that? And there's people like that all the time.
yeah. So we're not going to touch upon. He has another sheet. I'll take a look at it and see if I feel it will be good for us. If there are monetary ramifications, if a person was damaged, was harmed, people get lung cancer. Non-smokers can get lung cancer from being around, right? Smoking lung cancer, right? From being around smokers, right? Can a person make a monetary claim for this, right? But Ian, I think the cases that we're mostly talking about are cases where there's not much of a monetary claim that could be made.
What I'm saying
So
is,
I'm saying, certainly one is transgressing a mitzvah, whether it's the positive or the negative that one is going against, or not fulfilling the positive, right? And I would say, in addition to that we often see that these things come back to a person. The Gemara tells the story of a wealthy person who had a beautiful field adjacent to a public pathway, and there were some stones that were in his field that were getting in the way of his plowing, so he was lifting up these stones and tossing it off of his field onto the pathway. So someone walked by and said to him, "Why are you throwing the stones from the field from the area that doesn't belong to you to the area that does belong to you?" And he gave him a quizzical look, like, what are you talking about? I'm throwing it from my field, right, out of my field onto the pathway. So why are you describing it as throwing it from that which doesn't belong to me to that which does belong to me? Well, the Gemara says this person ended up having to sell his field. And he was a poor person. He became a poor person. And he was walking along on the path alongside that which had been his field, and he stumbled on a rock that was there in the field, and that was there in the pathway. And at that point, he understood the wisdom what this person had said to him. Right? The field at that point was his, but it wouldn't be his for long. And the public thoroughfare, that is the only thing that was his and would remain to be his. And we say, what goes around comes around. What comes around goes around. What the exact expression? But sorry. What goes around comes around. Right. So I would say that if a person acts with this disregard for others, then that will come back to them. Often I look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, right, and you see how much hate is being inculcated, right, on the Palestinian side, and you see how much hate there is in their society, not just against the Jews, but against one another, and this group fighting with that group, and when there's a certain mindset, then it takes on a life of its own, and it goes far beyond the boundaries that one often intended for it to be confined within. So we don't live in a. I'll conclude with this. The Gemara says that even though there are no punishments that are given out by the Beit Din, by the Sanhedrin, but the Gemara says that the din, right, meaning the heavenly orchestration that will bring about what is meant to come about, that hasn't stopped just because there's no longer a Beit Din to actually put it in play. So we create the reality that's around us. We create the world that's around us, and those are the repercussions of of such behavior. So the Hilchot Shchenim, the Nizkei Shchenim, is that even if you are within your own Dalit, I'm going to say within your own domain, right, one has to be very, very, very careful, and not wanting to be careful, one is prohibited from doing anything that will cause any harm, any damage, or any lack of utilization for those around us. Okay, my friends, we'll call it over here.
Is that, I'm not